Welcome to the Industry Edge podcast, where we dive into strategies and insights from leaders shaping the world's hardest working industries. If you're passionate about making a big impact in B2B, you're in the right place. Now let's get started.
Author of the Predictive Hiring Model and the 5 Attributes Essentials of Hiring. With over 30 years of leadership experience at organizations like Mars, Sony, Providence Music, and a global nonprofit, Chad brings real-world expertise and practical insight to the table. He now serves as the principal chairman for C12 in East Tennessee and as chairman of the Lee University School of Business Advisory Board, where he's passionate about investing in the next generation of business leaders. Chad, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm so happy to have you here.
Danielle, thank you. It's a joy to be with you.
Awesome. Well, first one's easy to get, the juice is flowing. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do and your background.
Yeah, well, you've obviously shared a little bit about my background, but the joy for me, God has done so much in and throughout my life. 30 years there in the Nashville community, leading in HR operations, and now in executive coaching. Today, I serve the C12 organization in East Tennessee. Have the privilege of coaching Christian CEOs and business owners while also helping organizations really transform the way they hire. And unfortunately, sometimes when they have to fire, as well as how they build a flourishing culture. So out of those years of hiring, you mentioned the 2 books I've written. I felt like God has asked me to write those, and I'm hoping that, through opportunities like this and others, that, it just spreads the word of how people can truly hire at an excellent level. My passion really is simple. Help leaders build strong, healthy organizations by hiring the right people the first time. And I really genuinely believe that they can do that through this systematic, repeatable process.
Yep. Thank you for that intro. That was great. So tell me, on the topic of process, tell me a little bit about that process and why it works for the businesses that you work with.
Yeah. So the process, it has 6 steps involved in the process. It's a very disciplined process. And one of the greatest challenges, Danielle, that you are probably familiar with, I know you've been through one of my workshops that I talk about, is that most people are not prepared when they actually move into hiring. And as a result, they need a process, a systematic, repeatable process, something that literally can help them predict the outcome. Peter Drucker said that 2/3 of all hiring decisions, unfortunately, are hiring mistakes. So literally, what that means, and this is what came to my mind when I heard it the first time, is that we're going to pay people to make mistakes 70% of the time. I don't know about you, but in any other area of the business, would we tolerate that? And I don't think we would. Actually, we wouldn't pay people we wouldn't rightfully bring them into our organizations and know that, hey, they're going to make a mistake 70% of the time. So I thought, we got to do a better job in hiring our folks. And so this has been a journey for me, well over 20 of those 30 plus years in the human resources and operations fields to really make that shift. And the book, The Predictive Hiring Model, 6 Disciplines to Get It Right Every Time, can really help your audience, those that are willing to read the book and to implement it. It can really help them take it from that 33% success ratio all the way up into the 90th percentile. Wow. And I can literally say that because I have surveyed the places that I've been. I, along with my teams that have worked with me, we have surveyed our hiring managers, and literally over 90% of the time, the hiring managers 90 to 120 days later would say, I would hire them again. And so that's significant. That's actual hardcore data that literally, if you if you asked people those questions in other organizations, most people might often, 30 something percent of the time they might have a positive response, but 70% of the time they would say, no, I would not hire the person again. And that's because they don't have a predictable process.
That is crazy because you're so right that where in any other part of your business are you going to say, yeah, somebody's getting it wrong for 70%. That is just not tolerable. So it is
No.
crazy that we allow that and that's actually the statistic out there. What do you
Yeah.
feel like are some of the two, like if you had to put two or three things, what are those common mistakes that you see that people keep making? Like, I know in the
Yeah.
workshop you talked about like people just going off of a gut reaction versus actually qualifying the candidate. What are a couple other things that you feel like you're seeing that are common mistakes that people are making?
Well, the first one, and I talk about this in the book, is literally lack of preparation.
Mhm.
Uh, so often people go into, I'll just pick up a piece of paper, and you see this in an interview. People will start looking at the resume, and then they start flipping through it, and you can literally tell they're not ready. They're not ready for that. They haven't seen the resume very much. They have not prepared questions. They have no process in place. So
Mhm.
lack of preparation really is number one. Most organizations are very unstructured in their hiring process, if they have a process at all, actually.
Mhm.
So as a result, they can't fairly compare candidates one to another, and as a result, they achieve erratic results. The second is hiring too fast to fill a position. They feel the pain of an open position, and it rushes them to make a quick hiring decision that unfortunately often turns into a hiring mistake, like Peter Drucker talks about. Um, I love, along with a whole lot of other folks, a lot of us are fans of Patrick Lencioni. Pat talks about, I'd rather have the pain of an open position than to hire someone and make a mistake. And so my counsel would be stop hiring the wrong people, literally.
Right.
And that's what we're often doing. Again, 70% of the time we're hiring the wrong people because we do not have a predictable
Mhm.
hiring process. Would you mind if I actually added a third?
Yes.
And this is, I don't think this is natural in people's mind to think about this, but we so often have the wrong interviewers involved in our hiring process. It's such a big issue. So many organizations have various people involved in the hiring process because of job titles versus giftedness.
Mhm.
Uh, so my recommendation, just giving the short piece in the book, I talk about it a whole lot longer than I am here, but you really want people involved in the hiring process uh, who have what I call a high hiring batting average. It's a high HBA, and I talk a lot about it in the book and how to do that. And I've got some stories about people that we have involved, the teams that I have had that we've asked to be involved. And it's not just a bunch of HR people, just to be very candid. It's people throughout the organization, but they need to have a high HBA.
Okay, interesting. I feel like that's something. Could you elaborate more? Is that kind of what you're saying? You're selling the position just as much as you're qualifying. So it's like the interviewee and the interviewer are kind of needing to qualify each other. Is that what you
Yeah.
mean there? Is somebody that potentially hates the hiring process, but somehow they're shoved into it?
Yeah.
They could kind of hurt the process and get the wrong person on board because
Well,
they aren't meant to be interviewing. Or can you elaborate more on that?
yeah, happy to do that. Because someone is in a particular seat, because maybe they're the vice president of this or that, oftentimes what happens is we say, okay, this is the person who needs to be interviewed. But if they're not gifted at interviewing, it can be so arduous. It's like going to the dentist with no Novocaine. I mean, as you might imagine. And that's a painful situation, not only for the individual who's interviewing, but also for the candidate who's interviewing with the company. And so what I've tried to do throughout the hiring processes that I have had the pleasure of facilitating is I'll watch those interviewers and just try to see, uh, is this person really gifted? I mean, can they really, do they have x-ray vision into people? And so, for example, and I talk about this in the book, I talk about a lady who I'll just say her first name. She lives there in Middle Tennessee. We worked together in a really large corporation there in Nashville. But her name's Karen, and Karen had X-ray vision, literally, into people. She was our senior director of cost accounting in our business. The people in her particular channel that worked with and for her absolutely loved her. They were productive. She retained those individuals. And as a result, as I was looking throughout the organization, I was thinking, my goodness, she is so gifted at this. We need to have her involved in our hiring process, not just for her channel, but for the entire organization. And so I asked her, I said, Karen, would you, if you, I don't want to press this on you, but if you have available time when we have candidates coming through because of your giftedness, because of your high HBA, your hiring batting average, people stay with her. People are more productive than other departments. People love her leadership. She exuded the culture of the company, of the organization. Those are all characteristics. I said, would you join us as part of the panel who actually interviews? And she said, I'd love to. And for years, she was involved in that process. And I, honestly, we really couldn't have done it without people like her involved in that process. So that's how you might go about looking for the right people. On the contrary, by the way, had a senior executive that was involved in the hiring process, and I could just tell. I mean, it was painful for him. He hated it. And so I just went to our CEO and I said, hey, would you have an issue if he was not involved? I realize he's one of the senior executives, but it's really not a gift for him. Could we extract him from the process as long as he's agreeable to it? He said, Chad, go for it, And I went to the guy and I said, hey, here's what it appears to be. And he said, oh, I would love it if you would get me out of this.
Right.
But I mean, and all we were doing was just identifying strengths and weaknesses and gifts and, and getting people involved in the process where, again, I'm just going to repeat it for a final time, people that have a high HBA.
Well, and he was so relieved too. I think people just get so just in your normal process and rotation of doing things that it's like you
Absolutely.
forget to assess, like, do you even like doing this? Do you like participating in the hiring process or not? It's such a simple thing, and you were able to observe that and be like, this is not the dude. This is the girl that needs to be in that seat. And what does that do to their organization and their retention? That's remarkable. You mentioned the 5 C's in the attributes of hiring. Can you tell me what those are and just a little bit about why each of those are so important in your approach?
Yeah. So shameless plug here. This is the first book that I wrote, which is the 5 Attributes Essentials of Hiring. It is specifically targeted on the 5 C's. And this tells you what to look for. Okay. The next book, which is really how you and I intersected, which is the newest book. And actually, I do talk even more extensively about the 5 C's in this book, but I also give you a whole lot more about how to actually hire through the predictive hiring process. But specifically on the 5 C's, it's character, calling, chemistry, competence, and contribution. And let me just spend just a couple of minutes and I'll unpack it for you. Character is the foundation. In my workshops, I often have people ask me, is there a priority of the 5 C's? And I say, absolutely. Yes. It's character, because people can't give what they do not possess. Calling is the second one. Calling is the person's passion. It's their God-given talents and their purpose. And unfortunately, after over 5,000, literally, that's kind of a conservative number, over 5,000 interviews under my belt, I often find that most candidates really don't have a clue of what their gifts are, what's their calling in life. So vitally important. Third is chemistry. It's the alignment of values, beliefs, and behaviors between the individual and the organization. Does this person fit with the team and the culture? The fourth one is competence. Competence is the knowledge, skills, and abilities needed to excel in the role. And while this is vitally important, I would say that most organizations, I think you would agree with me, Danielle, most organizations zone in on this one. These are the hard skills, of somebody. Do they have these hard skills? And we will make hiring decisions based on if the person can just do accounting, if they can just do purchasing, if they can just do, whatever it is, whatever those hard skills are. Uh, and that's why we're making hiring mistakes. This is a sliver of the pie. So it's vital. Competence is vital, but it's not the whole picture.
Mhm.
Then the final one, the fifth one, is contribution. Uh, a tip of the hat to Peter Drucker, the father of modern day management. That contribution is the ability to make an immediate and a long-term contribution to the organization. Are we adding value to the organization? And when you hire with all five in balanced, we don't just fill a position, we strengthen the whole organization. And to me, and I hope this is a help to folks as they're hiring, but it's incredibly exciting. It's an exciting process. It's an invigorating step to really be able to hire people with all five C's. And I'm willing, literally, if somebody, if they only have four of the five, I'm willing to say, it's just not the right fit for
Wow.
us.
I was going to ask that of, do you feel like there's ever wiggle room, or that they have, like, if they don't have one of them? Because I'd say that, like what you said, the care, and you could tell me otherwise, but I would say people battle with, like, oh, that gut instinct. I love that person. I loved her. I loved him. But then they look past the competence. But then on the flip note of what you said, you hear people that are buying or hiring just for hard skills and
Right.
going, we'll work on the culture, or they'll fit in, or we'll make it
Yeah.
work. Which one, like, so you're saying that it likely will not work if one or the other,
Yeah. If
or
you're,
one is not there.
yeah, I have found over the years that often the soft skills are the ones that are non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm.
It's I can train you for what you could do. Now, generally, hey, if I'm hiring for a CPA role, I mean, I need them to have a CPA.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not saying that. I don't want somebody to watch this podcast and go, well, he's totally out to lunch
Mm-hmm.
in that. So you do need to have those. But so often in roles, particularly if it's entry level roles, uh, I can train folks
Mm-hmm.
for those skills.
Yep.
But what I can't do is I can't train your character. I can't train your calling. I really can't even train the chemistry with folks. And so those are vitally important. In the workshop, you haven't asked this. You may ask this later. I don't know, and we might dive into it a little bit more deeply. But there's hard skills and soft skills, and the need for balancing that with people is vitally important in your hiring process. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot we could talk about in this podcast, and I know we can't talk about everything. So
You could tell me a little bit more about that. That's a interest, the
yeah.
hard versus soft skills and the complementary, like why you need both. And
Well,
tell me about
so
that.
oftentimes, I mean, I'll give a specific example of an organization that I was with. We had a CFO that was really competent in all of the financial areas, but could really was not good with problem solving, communicating with other people. Uh, and those are vitally important soft skills
Mm-hmm.
in being able to deliver the end result.
Right.
Part of our culture. And as a result, it was very unfortunate. Our CEO had to make a very hard decision that, hey, we're going to have to help this person be a blessing somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And, and, and hired somebody else in with a more comprehensive picture with all five C's. Pat Lencioni, and again, I'm a big fan. He has a great book. I would endorse this book called The Ideal Team Player, where he talks about humble, hungry, and smart individuals. I will say I wrote this book before Pat wrote his book. And I would actually equate a lot of the 5 C's in the humble, hungry, and smart. And it would be very easy for me to get on a very nerdy path to tell you all of the little connections there. But I would say both of those books are vital to people.
Yep. That and I we are still a relatively small team, but when we were at our workshop, I participated a lot, and I said that a lot of what we've done in our organization is we've hired based off of, number one, gut feeling. We don't have necessarily a process,
Mm,
but I will say that we've done a pretty good job of making sure that they're going to be the right teammate for our culture and our values, because
yes.
at the end of the day, skills can be trained and the right person will work
Yeah.
hard and get there. Obviously there's certain skills that you have to have, but those are so hard, especially if they're in a client facing role and you're talking with customers.
Oh,
There's certain things that you can't teach, it's more built
yeah.
into the character of who they are. So I I love that methodology, and I'm interested in continue. We have not hired since our predictive hiring workshop, but I will definitely be applying your model to the next time that we do, for sure. Um, Speaking of the workshop, you talked a lot, or not a lot, but you briefly mentioned it, and then conversations kind of stirred up about it. But you talked about employer branding at workshop. Can you tell me a little bit, for the folks that might not know what that is? Tell me a little bit what that is, and a story that you're proud of a
Yeah.
company that has
Yeah.
done a really good job at investing in employer brands and what it did
Yeah.
from, like, the rewards that it gave them for it.
Well, so I will say, I mean, the organizations that I have been with, whether that's the Mars Corporation, whether that's the Gideons International, where I have been, I think we've done a really good job of employer branding. Once I got there, and once we, and the whole team, once we really built out that employer branding process. But I probably have to give a tip of the hat, and I've done a little bit of product placement with my dear friends over at Chick-fil-A, and I'll take a
Love it.
real sip at that point. I believe that they are one of the greatest examples of employer branding. They built an employer brand as so strong that young people truly want to work there. And I don't know that it's just young people. I mean, it's almost anybody. But my youngest son has worked there for 10 years. He left there, actually, went to work for a very large corporate entity there in the Franklin area, and actually has just recently realized something about himself, that he really missed that employer brand. I mean, he missed that organization, and as a result, he's actually he resigned there, and he's actually going back to Chick-fil-A there in Franklin. And what I would say is that I don't think his story is uncommon,
Mhm,
actually. People line up. We know this. They line up to eat there. They often line up to work there too. And their brand communicates purpose. It communicates culture. It communicates opportunity.
mhm,
And so it attracts talent to share their values. One of the greatest results of this approach, by the way, of having an employer brand like that, is that the companies move from struggling to fill jobs to becoming the employer of choice in their region.
mhm,
It proves, though, that employer branding isn't about fluff. It's about showing why great people want to be a part of your mission.
mhm,
So I would say absolutely need to build your employer brand. And you're doing that as you do business. We talk a lot about this in C12, the organization that I serve within. And I think C12 is doing a good job of
mhm.
building its employer brand so that C12 chairs want to come in, as well as people want to come in and be a member,
Yeah.
of C12.
Right.
So,
I completely agree with you for Chick-fil-A. There's a reason that their line and their
yeah.
drive-through is always packed. If there's another, I'm not gonna drop any names, but another fast food chain next door, there's nothing there, and everybody's at Chick-fil-A,
Uh,
and there is a reason for that. And you're right. I think it will start from within first, and because people, customers, can feel the rewards and the love and the care that the people that at Chick-fil-A, how they work and how they treat people. It's
yeah.
different. It feels
Yeah.
different. And so people want to go there to eat there.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree with that. What would you tell somebody who obviously Chick-fil-A is big, but you've worked with smaller organizations too. When is the right time on that? Like you don't, is it, if you're a small organization, should you be investing in creating this early on? What would you say to somebody who's a little bit smaller?
I'd start day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I would start building my employer brand due to the fact whether you are building, whether you think you're building that employer brand or not. And I'm actually pulling something here. I want to show it to you as an example of what we just talked about. You literally are building your employer brand from the get-go. This literally is this came. I was in a Chick-fil-A one day. I was working, and uh, the person came up to me. One of the employees came up to me and actually said, "Would you like a refill?" I said, "Oh, I'd love that. That'd be wonderful." And this is what I got back, literally, from them. I don't know if you can see that, but it's hugs and kisses and a heart. And I don't know any other organization that you could go to that you're going to feel that kind of love. I do know that Southwest Airlines, formally, and I think, I love what they do. I think they could strengthen it a
Hmm.
little bit now. But if they can talk about love, why can we not talk about love in our companies, in our employer brand,
Hmm.
and even experiences like this? I think it's needed.
Yep.
But to start day one.
Yep. That's so special. And I think that's something too, like to kind of go off that even further, that, we as business owners, it's like we talk about the deliverables, the ROI, the revenue, all the things that you do for customers, for clients to help their business thrive. And that is absolutely a value add and a critical thing. That's why you work with people and vendors and partners.
Yes.
However, value comes in different forms. It's, the relationship and the way you make your customers and your clients feel is just as important, if not more important sometimes than the services that you're providing them. So that's what I always try to encourage my team of, that you're just being thoughtful of the person that is sitting on the other
Mhm.
end of the seat and providing
Yes.
value not only for us from a marketing standpoint and a branding standpoint, but them as a person because
Yeah.
they're humans at the end of the day and we all have good days, bad days,
Yes.
happy days, and the fact that we can be a partner that, brings ideas but also pays attention to who they are as a person, that goes a long way, and it makes a really big difference in whether or not when people are looking at partnering with you, or like going the extra mile for people makes a big difference versus
Yes.
just providing a service.
Well,
So I
and
agree.
that's a biblical principle.
Mhm,
It is a second mile behavior,
mhm,
and that's exactly what we need to be doing every single time.
yep,
And that is part of building your employer brand. If people know you're going to go above and beyond,
mhm,
you're going to go the second mile. Uh,
absolutely.
they want to do business with you.
Absolutely. I'm sure a lot of people have watched the Chosen on Prime, and that episode where Jesus and the disciples go the extra
Yeah.
mile. I'm like, oh, when they put all the equipment on them and they just keep going, I'm like, that would be really hard, but it's so true, and it's deeply rooted in what the gospel says to do. So I completely agree. A little plug for the Chosen. We love that show. We love that show,
I
and
love it.
it's
I
so
love it.
good. It's so good. Why do you feel like people and organizations struggle to move past that gut feeling of like, nope, they're the right person. We don't need to interview anymore. What do you feel like? Like, why do people struggle with that and just saying yes? Is it what?
Yeah.
Why is the reason for that? Do you think?
Well, I think I genuinely believe that people believe this can't be that difficult. Hiring is not that big of a deal. And by the way, so often organizations will put someone who is the gatekeeper over their hiring process that absolutely has no business being over that process. And you really need somebody who cares as much about your mission, vision, and values
Hmm.
over your hiring process, that cares about it as much as you do, or cares about it more than you do. The organizations that I have been with, I think I have always felt like that my CEOs have said, Chad, here's this is our hiring, and we desperately need you to be responsible for it. And I look upon on that as stewardship.
Mhm.
So the stewardship aspect of that is vitally important. Uh, Hiring by gut feelings also is easier, but it's highly unreliable. Just to get to real data, bias, emotions, first impressions take over.
Mhm.
And that's why Peter Drucker said that over 2/3 of all hiring decisions are hiring mistakes, because their new hires often fail within 12 to 18 months. So the predictive hiring model replaces the guesswork
Mhm.
with discipline. It gives leaders 6 practical steps, from clarifying success profiles to structured interviews to even scorecards, that can create consistency and objectivity.
Mhm.
So it's when leaders follow the model, uh, hiring shifts from chance to an absolute confidence that you have the right person.
Yep, for sure.
So,
What do you feel like with the gut, like to kind of just go even deeper on the gut feeling, do you feel like when you do make a hire based off of that or what you've seen in your experience, is it that the candidate can't live up to the expectations or that feeling that the person that hired them when, they just got that really good, like oh, they're perfect. And then the expectations were just very high for the leader or the hiring manager that hired them? Or does it really come back to either hard skills or one of the C's? Or do you feel like it's a mix of both? What would you say on that?
well, I'll give a specific example. I think, hopefully, this will address your question. I was very new to an organization. It was a Christian organization, and I was sitting in the interview. I'd been there about 3 weeks, and was just listening to the hiring manager as they interviewed the candidate. And I was primarily there really just to be a fly on the wall. Really wasn't supposed to say anything. They asked the individual to share what their calling was. Tell us a little bit about your calling. And the individual, honestly, they did a fantastic job of sharing their calling. And it really matched the need of what the organization had for one of the 5 C's,
Mhm.
for calling. Hiring manager, popped their notebook after that and said, well, if that's good enough for me, I think we're done. To which I actually said, which that would be kind of gut feeling.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, this is great. Here's one of the C's, which, by the way, they weren't really thinking of the 5 C's at that point, but because I hadn't rolled it out at all into the organization. But, they closed the notebook and said, hey, this is great. And I said, time out. Um, let's go a little deeper. You
Mhm.
know, let, and I said, hey, and I started asking questions in the interview. And I'll make a long story very short. We got to the end, the person left, and then the hiring manager and I, and one of the other folks from their department was in the interview, and they said, "Oh my word, I'm so glad you continued on because I wouldn't hire this person now."
Mhm.
But if I hired the way that I normally hired, which ultimately was gut feeling, uh, I would have hired them and I would have made a huge mistake. But you went so much deeper in those, and it said it kind of seemed like you had a lot of C's in there. And I said, yeah, I did, and then I talked with them about the 5 C's
Yeah.
and, uh, and so there's the difference literally in a practical life situation of where somebody was going to use gut feeling in an interview,
Mhm.
felt like, okay, we're done. I've asked this one question, and that literally was just one thing they needed to ask.
Yep.
When I opened that up to them, more like a flowering, flourishing, opportunity, they could see all of the missing pieces that they really needed to be asking in the interview process.
Mhm.
And something I had done for years, something that they just didn't know about.
Yep.
But we trained, and ultimately, as we trained that organization, the organization really improved. And I oftentimes, even now, go into organizations and help them learn these steps and process.
Yeah. What was there, if you don't mind sharing, and totally fine. What if it was calling? So I'd guess that character and calling, they had a pretty good, like, oh, okay, they'd be a good fit. Where was it that it kind of went
Derailed.
derailed? Yeah.
You know what? I have to be honest. I don't remember exactly, where it derailed, but I do know that the person did not have all of the competence,
Okay.
the
Like the
area
hard
of
skills that
competence that they
needed.
needed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, it's, there's a fifth and a fifth and a fifth and a fifth and a fifth. I mean,
Yep.
you need all of this. When we're hiring, we're looking for a whole pie.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking Actually, let me go back and say we're actually looking for a whole person. And we want the whole person to be able to be present at work.
Yep.
So if we just interview someone for 1/5 of who they are, we're really not looking deeply enough
Mm-hmm.
into them. Even with Pat Lencioni's model, we would if we just looked at humility and said, okay, the person is not hungry, the person is not EQ smart, because Pat's really not talking about IQ there; he's talking about EQ. Uh, then that would be an incomplete way to interview as well. So either model, it would be vitally important that you're looking at the whole person.
Yep, for sure. That that makes total sense. Well, I have one more final question. If you could
Sure.
give one piece of advice to a CEO, maybe a small business owner potentially, or an HR
Mm,
leader that is in that seat, what would you say that they could initiate
mm,
today? Like if they say they have an interview tomorrow, what is a couple questions that you feel like they should ask or things that they
yeah.
could do to prepare for an interview?
Well, I think it's a mind shift, Danielle. Unfortunately, I think what most people look at hiring as is they look at it as a transactional
Mhm.
task, checkbox situation. They really need to be thinking about hiring as a strategic discipline within their organization. Keep in mind, I mean, if they're hiring people, they're bringing someone into their organization that literally will help determine their culture, performance, and the future of the organization. So don't delegate it to whoever simply has time.
Yeah.
Make it central to your leadership agenda. In other words, slow down to hire right, because the right hire actually speeds up everything else. I mean, if we get the right people in the right seat, what it allows us to do is to speed the entire process up. So I often have people who will say, "Oh, this is taking too long." I would really like to take the time to get that right than to make a mistake. And then I have, 6, 12, 18 months of trying to move this person outside our organization.
Yep.
And it's totally unproductive. It's impacting us in so many other ways.
Yep.
So transactional move, don't be thinking about it like that. Think about it as a strategic opportunity for you in
Mhm.
your organization.
Yep. Agreed. I love that. Awesome. Is there anything else that I have not asked you that you feel like would benefit the listeners?
Well, I'll be honest. I'm such a nerd on all of these topics that we could be on here for hours.
Yes, we could.
Literally. So I won't do that to you or your audience. But I'm grateful for the time, and yeah, it's wonderful. And hiring can be so much fun if you make it that.
Right. It's an
Yeah,
investment. I think that's what I try to like. It's an investment in your business versus a cost
absolutely.
if you do it right. Like it feels like a cost if
Yes.
you hire the wrong person and waste a lot of
Yes.
time. But if you're doing what you're saying and taking the time, taking the right approach, it's an investment in your business that's exciting about your team growth. So I completely agree that it should be
Yeah.
a fun
Mm,
process for sure.
mm, you
Awesome.
bet.
Well, to wrap it all up, we've been talking with Chad Carter, Principal Chairman of C12 in East Tennessee. Chad, tell us where we can learn more about you and your book.
Yeah, so I mean, I did the shameless plug on the two books, but you can you can find me on LinkedIn. Obviously, happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. I do have a website that's predictivehiringmodel.com, www. Uh, predictivehiringmodel.com. And you can find the books. You'll have links on there where people can get to it. But again, the key thing is it's a systematic, repeatable process.
Hmm.
And I'd love to see leaders embrace this proven model. It really is proven. I have statistical data in the book that proves the model. Uh, because it helps me to know, and it'll help them to know that the right hires don't just people don't just fill jobs. They change the trajectory of their organizations if they will use process like this that is very, very predictable.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And this was so great. Thank you for being on the show.
Danielle, thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Industry Edge podcast. If you like what you heard on today's episode, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review or click subscribe so you'll get updates about future episodes. We'll see you again soon.